Welcome, everyone, to episode 705 of the NBA podcast. I'm Brian Toporek, and we have a great show for you today. Free agency is mostly done with. The draft is over. We'll see about some big trades, but as of now, things are relatively quiet around the NBA other than Summer League, which makes this a perfect time to step back and reevaluate how the championship race could stack up after we saw a lot of player movement this summer. Before we do that, a reminder that you can follow us on Twitter at the NBA Pod. You can find our Twitter handles in our bios to give us a follow as well. You can also find us on iTunes and wherever else podcasts are found. On iTunes, please subscribe, download, leave some 5-star reviews. Joining me today is not my usual co-host, Morten Jensen. He is on vacation, so we have instead called a longtime friend of the show, Dan Favale of the HardwoodKnocks podcast, to help us out ranking these title contenders. And Dan, how's it going, my man?
I'm doing great. You know why I'm doing great? Because it feels like we have podcasts that are in the clip that haven't been released yet that people don't know about. Like me and you've recorded, I feel like over the past 2 months, back and forth between each other's shows like a bunch, and for some stuff for BR too. So I'm excited to get to talk to you again about the championship picture. How are you doing?
I am likewise excited. I'm always happy to have you on. And yes, as you alluded to, we do have some fun stuff coming out on the BR front. One this week and then one hopefully next week as well. So we will stay tuned to Twitter for that. But the one coming out this week, I had a lot of fun with. And
I'm still salty about that one. I'm not going to
lie. Well, maybe we'll have to record a reaction podcast just to review how many times. Yeah, I'm not going to spoil it. All right, so we're doing title contenders, and Dan was kind enough to cook up a tier maker for us. So we're not gonna go 1 through 30. We're just gonna break them up into 5 tiers. Dan, I did not ask you before we recorded, but I did ask you what your tiers, how you quantified them, or what an S tier correlates to, an A tier correlates to. So we could have taken very different approaches to this, which will make
which means
even
we
more
have
fun.
To argue towards a consensus, which I love.
That's right. So let's start at, where do you want to start? Top or bottom?
I feel like in this, we've been taught, because of what we do for a living, that you should go in reverse order. But this feels like one of those situations where more of the discussion actually happens for the teams that are on the lower poll. So I feel like we should begin with S and then work our way back, unless you disagree.
Let's do it. I agree, because frankly, the D tier for me was the teams that are, what's the say? There was like rigging for Wiggins back in the day. Do we have one of those for Cooper Flag yet?
Yes, it's I think John Hollinger coined it, SAG for flag.
SAG for flag. Okay. Yep. So tier D for me are the SAG for flag teams.
What about in the pooper for Cooper?
I like that.
What? When I release this on the HardwoodKnocks feed a day after you release it, I might call the podcast in the pooper for Cooper.
I think that's a brilliant idea, and I cannot wait for the eyes emoji tweet that you send out with that. All right, so S tier, Dan. How did you classify these teams?
So I view S tier as, I don't want to coin it as like you're disappointed if they didn't win the title, but like you're going in as my bar for S tier, I would say, is like these are the great teams. And I'm curious to see what you ended up with. I only have one team in my S tier.
Ooh, interesting. Okay. So
I think it's Boston. Like we both have them in S tier, right?
Yes.
And it's just with them, what's interesting is I know people have kind of, to keep in theme with the feces comments, poo-pooed their path to a championship. But like, isn't there just they had a top 4-point differential per 100 possessions in the regular season and playoffs combined of all time. Isn't there just a chance that like we all kind of tried to find flaws or slept on what is just this generational type team when you look at and I know there's the Kristaps injury. It seems like he's going to miss, at least be out until Christmas or around then. And who knows how much he plays once he comes back. I just can't bring myself to care. Like this team is really good. And I think you could make cases for some teams to be, and I would have made a case for the Nuggets had they kept KCP to be in their tier, but like I need bankability in the S tier. And it feels like when you get into teams like Philly, it's, well, how does Paul George mesh in? What does Joel Embiid's health look like? When you get to a team like the Nuggets, it's, okay, we know Christian Brown is good, but just saying that he can fill in for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, which by the way, he can't because he's not the same offensive player, but defensively,
Right.
sure. Well, now you need someone else to level up behind him. And so, like, even the Knicks, it's, well, how does Mikal Bridges fit in? And what's up with OG Anunoby's health? And how do they reintegrate Julius Randle? And now all of a sudden it's Mitchell Robinson is like your only center, unless you want to play Jericho Sims or a bunch. So, or maybe Tibbs will go to Julius Randle / OG as like his 5. So when I look at the Celtics, even with the KP injury, I just have fewer questions.
Okay, that's fair. One team I will note that you left out in the as you were like knocking out teams of why they aren't S tier. What about OKC?
Yeah, do you know what? I've gone back and forth on this. Is all they did this offseason was incredible, but they did all of it without addressing what I thought was their biggest need. And that was the third shot creator type to break down defenses from a dead stop. Now that I'm thinking about it, though, and I just wrote about this, so I should have thought about it. But like, I'm just discounting that Jalen Williams isn't going to get better, that Chet Holmgren isn't going to get better, that maybe Aaron Wiggins isn't going to take on more, or Cason Wallace. So if you have them in S tier, I won't fight that for a minute, because we have our Thunder podcast on the side, Thunder Buddies. Go like and subscribe.
Right.
But yeah, so that's a team that I still just, if I knew like what J-Dub was going to look like or how much of a floor game they were going to let Chet Holmgren explore, I might feel more comfortable with it. But like, yeah, that would be a team to consider for sure as well. And I think you could also, if you really wanted to, mention Milwaukee, just because their depth is weird, but like they destroyed and this is with Dame just missing wide open threes last year. He's not going to, he might get older. He's not missing wide open threes forever, but like they trucked opponents when Dame, Giannis, and Chris Middleton were on the floor. Like they absolutely annihilated them. So, so you had OKC in your S tier.
I took a slightly different approach with my S tier. Because I actually had 4 teams and then 5 with a question mark that I was like waffling between. So my S tier was just like, I don't want to call it title contenders, because I think teams in the A tier also could potentially contend for a title, but title front runners, or honestly, it's like most of the teams just with the best Vegas odds, and I think frankly the Vegas is pretty right on with their determination here. So yeah, I had the Celtics, obviously, had the Thunder, had the Knicks, had the Sixers, and then the Nuggets were my question. It's like, I don't want to overrate. They were up 20 points at home in Game 7 in the second half, and then just blew a giant lead. And who knows if they hold that lead. I think there's a very good chance they beat Dallas. There's a chance they even beat Boston and repeat as champions. And like, maybe we're all just overreacting. But to your point, the loss of KCP is huge. The DeRon Holmes injury, very unfortunate for them. I think, I wrote about them a couple months ago, that I understand what they're doing. And I think it's frankly kind of a smart approach, where they're just doubling down on youth, and they're saying, we've got Jokic, Jamal, and Michael Porter Jr. on these max contracts. Like, we're going to be a second apron team for the foreseeable future. And really the only way for us to sustain this is to hit on young players, like lean on them, give them the reps, get them ready. And it might have cost us the title last year, but if these guys pop, then we've got these guys under, cheap, cost-controlled contracts for a couple of years. So like, I respect the approach that they're going for here, but to your point, yeah, even if Christian Braun can scale up and replace KCP, who is now scaling up to replace Christian Braun coming off the bench? So, it feels like I'm nervous about discounting Nikola Jokic. Just, we've seen what he can do in the playoffs. He's anchored a championship contender before, or a championship team before. And even this year, the Nuggets lose in the second round, he still averaged like 30, 13, and 8 or something absurd. So, I probably, like, if there were 6 tiers, I might have Celtics, Thunder on the S tier alone, and then Knicks, Sixers, and Nuggets on the tier below them, but above all these other teams.
And that's what I was going to ask you. And so the pivot point for me, because if we were to rank these within the same tier, I think Boston and OKC was in the top of my A tier. So I'm fine with them being an S. I think your approach is probably makes for better conversation, and it's more just like, okay, do we really need one team in S tier? But with the Sixers, is like, how do you reconcile Joel Embiid has basically never been healthy for the playoffs or never really been great for an extended period of time in the playoffs? That doesn't, because in my opinion, if you're going to make the Knicks and the Sixers S tier, I think the Nuggets have to be S tier, because I would have them because of Jokic and just like the familiarity with the crux of their roster at the top. I'd probably have them in front of both, even though it's harder to come out of the West. And so how do you square away, like, we just have, it's not, I mean, it's borderline Kawhi level at this point, except he's playing through it, whereas just Joel Embiid is always hurt in the playoffs. And so how do you so even forget, like, they might have the most well-balanced sort of top three players in the league, the 1-3-5 look of Embiid, George, and Maxey. But I find it tough because of just Joel Embiid's health specifically of, well, do we really put them up there with these teams when we've never seen him healthy enough to even, I guess, like, understand? Like, we've seen flickers and flashes, don't get me wrong, but that just seems like a massive gamble to sort of, if we're dismissing the Nuggets, like, well, they let KCP go and they're banking on youthful development. The Sixers are like, well, we're just built around this guy that's never healthy, but needs to be healthy for us to win the title.
Right. Yeah. And that's a very fair critique. I'd say if we're drawing the comparison between him and Kawhi, Embiid's injuries have largely been fluky. Like, he breaks his face, Pascal Siakam, like, elbows him in the face and he breaks his face, or like he broke his face on Markelle Fultz's shoulder one year. The Bell's palsy thing this year was just like, what kind of Oregon Trail shit do we have going on? Like, how are we coming up with these diseases?
Who's going to get dysentery?
Yeah, right. Is cholera coming right down the corner? Like, I mean, maybe he had that against Toronto. He had bubble guts for a couple games.
I need the Nuggets or the Sixers to sign Gary Trent Jr. for the minimum, and then we can call him Dysentery Gary. If you know, you know. It's a Blink-182 song.
I love it. Yeah, according to all the fake rumor mongers on Twitter, Gary Trent Jr. is definitely signing with the Sixers any day now. It's been
I just want to make it clear in case people can't, delineate. I'm not hoping that Gary Trent Jr. gets dysentery. Right. I'm not rooting for that to happen.
Yeah, but so, like, yes, I mean, I just don't know how much stock to put into can this guy just not stay healthy for a 2-month stretch, or is it just like he has just gotten ridiculously unlucky and we're just dealing with a relatively small sample size here, and all you need, I mean, hell, it happens to Kawhi every year. All he needed was the 1 year in Toronto. Like, if things break right, I think the ceiling case for the Sixers might be, I don't want to be reckless here, but like, I think ceiling case is definitely, top tier title contender. The floor is a lot lower though. And if that makes you want to like push them out of the S tier because you're confident that the Celtics and Thunder have a higher floor as well, I think that's a very fair argument.
I'm willing to put them in S tier. I think the Nuggets have to go there then too. But I want, like, are you certain? I think this is where we're going to disagree. Who is right now the second most promising team in the East? Is it the Sixers or the Knicks? Because the Knicks, I think, certainly have a higher floor than Philly because of their depth. And just like the things they did, I know Tibbs was running his players into the ground. The things they did amid injuries this year was absolutely astounding when you look at all the players they lost. And if you get better health from just Julius Randle or Mitchell Robinson or OG Anunoby, and you've added Mikal Bridges, Hartenstein's a big loss. Don't get me wrong. I'm just like, the top part of the Sixers roster is better because there is a chance, and I'm in the bag for Jalen Brunson. I want to make that clear. He finished 5th on my MVP ballot, everybody. But like, there is a chance that the Sixers, when you pit top 3 against top 3, that they just have the best 3 players like in a series against the Knicks. And the Knicks, like, after Jalen Brunson, like, no one's, even if you want to take Jalen Brunson over Joel Embiid, like, their second and thirds are not going to come close to touching Paul George and Tyrese Maxey. Like, it's just not. Right. So I'm willing to listen to the case, but like, shouldn't the floor Matt, and also just the newness of just like, well, we
Yeah.
don't really know how Paul George. I know we don't know how Mikal Bridges will work either, but like we have a sample of like the Knicks with OG just basically destroyed people.
Right. And we've seen Mikal Bridges play with half of the Knicks already. It's not like Paul George, who has never played with this guy. I mean, we've seen Mikal Bridges win championships with his current teammates. So there is zero fit concerns with Mikal Bridges. Like I on paper, both of these guys should fit. Like Mikal should fit with the Knicks, Paul George should fit with the Sixers. Like I don't think either one of them are going to go completely off the rails. But yeah, I think if you're looking at who's going to be better day one of the 2024-25 season, it's almost certainly going to be the Knicks. They have continuity, they have chemistry. Like Embiid has already been kind of setting up some warning flares of like, yeah, we're really excited, but it's going to take time for us to mesh. Like this is not going to be an overnight thing. So day one of the season, I think the Knicks certainly have the higher floor. You could probably argue have the higher ceiling until we see the Sixers in action. Then it's just come April who has the higher ceiling. I think it could be closer because the Sixers now also have this KJ Martin contract they handed out. So they have a legitimate chance to upgrade.
And first round picks, which the Knicks, they have those fake ones from Washington and Detroit, but
right. And the Knicks, like my question with them is what happened with Julius Randle, because it seems like, they go on this big run without him last year. He's on the final year of his contract. Maybe because Jalen Brunson just took this big discount, that opens the door for Randle to stay as well. But I wonder, does he get boxed out at some point? Frankly, like who starts for the Knicks? Like, are you moving?
Well, that's why a lot of people have wondered, would it be better for them to break up Randle into two players so that you can just start the Nova Knicks with OG Anunoby?
Right.
And Mitchell. So it'd be Mitchell Robinson, bring Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, and then Josh Hart, and I guess bring Dante off the bench, or at least you get to a point where it's only one of them. Mm-hmm. What's interesting with Julius Randle too is maybe this isn't a problem because OG is still going to be making more than Jalen Brunson, but the Knicks played host to Jalen Brunson's superstar ascent. And even if you don't want to credit them for it, like they played host to it. They did the same thing with Randle, who's made 2 All-NBA teams with them. And now Jalen Brunson has set a clear precedent about like, well, I just took less. And so is that going to impact what the Knicks are going to ask Julius Randle to take in extension talks, where it's, it's kind of the same thing with Kawhi and PG. Why are you paying Randle more than Jalen Brunson at this point? In a vacuum, you shouldn't be, but Jalen Brunson's the one who agreed to take 12 on average over the next 3 years, about $12.5 million less. So right. I'm wondering if that makes it, I think it makes it either more likely that Randle's traded or that he signs an extension that is like, does he pull the PG and say, just give me what Jalen got? And like, maybe that's what you end up with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's reasonable. Because I mean, frankly, like Jalen Brunson, if he became a free agent next summer, I think he would have had the 5-year $270 million offer from, if not from the Knicks, from another team, or it would have been 4 years, but he would have gotten the full max. Like, I don't think Julius Randle is getting a full max.
No, he's not. He's too hard of a player to fit in. And we kind of saw it. He's younger than James Harden, but that's what it's become with James Harden, is even like James Harden was ridiculously good when he was in Philly for the most part.
Yeah.
And like, but there still just wasn't a market for him when like he had to pick up his player option. And so right. Julius Randle, extremely talented, incredibly important to the Knicks. But he's just such a he's tough to fit into a larger ecosystem is the way I would frame it on offense.
Yeah.
And that I think would limit the teams that want to go after him. And I think, look, with Jalen Brunson, I just think you're right. I'd said this on the podcast I did in reaction to the extension is I honestly think people said, well, he could have gotten injured and that money might not have been available. And I think from outside teams, maybe, but the Knicks have unloaded their war chest already in the image of this is Jalen Brunson's team. And so even if he had suffered a bad injury, I honestly think 5 years and 269 would have still been on the table for him from them. So that's why I do think he gave up that contract. But to get back to the actual thing that you have me on the show to do. So I guess we should go. I'm just saying within this tier, how do we feel about Nuggets, then Sixers, then Knicks?
I'm fine with it. Yeah.
Would you have had the Sixers above the Nuggets? I want an honest answer.
Again, not at the start of the season. I think the Sixers, if everything breaks right for them, I think they probably have the third highest ceiling of any team in the NBA. And that's Embiid and George stay healthy. That's they flipped the KJ contract mid-season. I don't know for whom, but they'll have some
By the way,
options.
that number came in a little bit. I actually haven't looked to see like what their apron status was, and like I thought the contract was going to be more than $8 million.
They're right at the first apron right now. Like
Okay.
once they felt they could have gone a little higher, like 12, 13 million, and then would have been in like second apron-ish territory. I wonder just they didn't want to have the second apron be a concern at all. They wanted to be aggregate contracts, that kind of thing. I agree. I haven't seen. I don't know if the official numbers have come out yet. Because I'm wondering if it's we heard 2 years 16 for Josh Okogie and your boy Simone Fontecchio as well. So I'm wondering if it's just like a straight dollar for dollar match with one of those guys.
This is tough because they're flat. Well, they're flat rates in terms of the contract, but I wanted someone to be signed for the exact dollar amount of just like where it's like, why is just trying to like why is Royce O'Neal making the same amount of money as Kyle Kuzma to the dollar?
Right.
I wanted something like that to happen.
I thought Dorian Finney-Smith might have been, or like have the exact dollar amount minus exactly one minimum contract.
Right.
But yeah, I'm good with this tier.
So our S tier is Boston, OKC, Denver, Philly, and New York. And I got to say, as a Knicks fan, it's surreal to have them in here and be debating, like, well, should they be in front of the Sixers and the Nuggets? Like, it's fucking insane.
Yeah. I mean, frankly, this might be too strong of a take. I was about to say I would be surprised if one of these 5 teams doesn't win the championship next year. It's a long season, things happen, but I would be fair. Like, if you gave me these 5 teams or the field, I would take these 5 teams by far.
I'm trying. You know what? I feel some type of way, and this is the time we're doing this. By the way, there's like something's brewing in New Orleans, and it's like they got to get a center at some point. Something I'm assuming will go down with Brandon Ingram, but the trade waters seem to be pretty barren for him. I look at the Bucks, and they're like, and then there's Dallas too, and I'm sort of like, I'll go with you though. I'll take one of these 5 winning. That's honestly, I've been trying to convince myself not to pick OKC to win the title next year. Like I'm trying to talk myself out of it because I think Boston deserves the respect of why would you ever pick against this team? What is the team that has the antidote to beat them? And I don't know that team exists, but so I think that's a strong S tier. I would say, since we're on to the A tier now, I'm assuming that Bucks and Mavericks fans will feel the most aggrieved.
Yeah, Minnesota fans too, I think.
Oh, yes, I apologize. They should be pissed off that I didn't mention them in the same way.
But yes, those were the toughest exclusions. So for me, the A tier was just what I called playoff locks, although I cheated because I went, in theory, if they're playoff locks, it should just be, between the S tier and the A tier, 6 teams from each conference. And I think I have 7 from each conference.
So I viewed this one as more like it's easy to envision them making the conference finals or making it out of their conference. Whereas like the teams above them, all these teams might have that expectations, but it's like, I viewed it. My standard was a little bit higher. So like I initially had OKC in this tier with Denver, the Sixers, but it was like these teams, it's just very easy to envision them being one of the last 4 teams standing at the end of the year.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, you were a little more selective because I had like the Magic were in this tier for me, the Kings were in this tier for me, which I'm guessing they were not.
Oh, we're gonna need to.
Yeah. Okay. No. Okay. We'll whittle down. So Mavericks, Wolves, Bucks, we agree in this tier.
How would you rank those 3?
Man, I mean, it's like, how do you put the Wolves above the Mavericks when the Mavericks just beat the Wolves in the playoffs? So I guess that answers that.
Well, I mean, you put them above because it's like, oh, Anthony Edwards is only 12 years old or something.
Right. There is that. And Joe Ingles, maybe we were underrating the Joe Ingles edition there.
Honestly, I thought that was an incredible get for them. And look, respect to them for not, they steered into the set. Like they did things that cost them money and assets this year, while all these other teams kind of lied about what was happening with this. Like the Clippers are still just like the biggest bullshitters in existence. Is the one that
Yeah.
got me. And
Yeah.
I kind of respect the Warriors. In February, Joe Lacob was like, yeah, we're just like not looking to have these huge tax bills anymore. And
Yeah.
I respect that more than the Clippers lying about like, the second apron is challenging. And it's like, well, you offered Paul George a contract that would have put you there anyway. So I'm very confused.
Right. So, oh man. I mean, the Bucks, you're right. Like, when they were all healthy, they were great. And adding Delon Wright, especially at a minimum, was a huge get for them. As
I
was, I
like
mean,
Torian
Torian,
Prince too. Yeah, I
yeah,
thought
right. Like, I know Lakers fans will scoff at that, but it's different when he's on a minimum deal and you don't have super high
when
expectations
you need
versus like
Torian Prince to
starting him.
be your only two-way player aside from LeBron and AD, like that's when it becomes an issue.
Right. The Bucks are probably a little covered there. Although you're right to point out New Orleans, we've heard some Brook Lopez rumblings this summer, so it's I guess I would say the Bucks as currently constructed would be in this tier for me, but if they did like some sort of Ingram for Brook Lopez and Pat Connaughton and stuff trade or like whatever
can't
it
be
takes.
that better. There needs to be like a third and eighth team involved. There's no way Brandon Ingram can go to Milwaukee. Right? That would just be so, and they can't aggregate. So that's just not even feasible.
Right. They're close enough to the second apron where they could get under it.
Oh
but
yeah.
it's constructing a deal. There would have to be a third team. Like I don't know how they would make it work. Like when those Brook Lopez and Ingram rumors came out, I spent like 5 minutes trying to figure it out. I'm like, nope, none of this makes sense. So it's probably not going to happen.
I was gonna say I do think the order that we have right now, Mavericks, Wolves, Bucks, feels like it's most right, just because the Bucks' depth is non-existent still. They're weirdly reliant on just wild cards or young players. And
Yep.
I think there's an argument for Minnesota over Dallas, but I still think Dallas is the better playoff team when you look at how they're built. And I know people are concerned about their point of attack defense, and maybe there's something going on with Quentin Grimes' medicals that I don't know about. But like that dude can defend. He did it in New York. He didn't do it in Detroit. He got injured. That's an answer for point of attack defense. And also they have Dante Exum still. So I know Najee Marshall isn't this perfect defensive replacement for Derrick Jones Jr. and you might miss his athleticism, but I think the Mavs, if we're like like that has sort of been my biggest tiebreaker. And also just how you're ordering is like who is best built to succeed in the playoffs. Right now, it does sort of feel like Dallas is clearly, to me, like out in front because like the Timberwolves need, like Rob Dillingham's not going to be that A-level shot creator immediately. I mean, if he is, oh my God, wow. And then you can't trust Karl-Anthony Towns to do that. And after that, you don't have options.
Yeah. Who did you have? Which other teams did you have in this tier?
So I had the Cavs in this tier.
Okay. I did too.
Okay, good. I just think, I did kind of have, I don't know if it was an overreaction, but I like when that initial reporting came out after their playoff exit from the Athletic, where it was just Donovan Mitchell, that Darius Garland doesn't really want to play with Donovan Mitchell, and they threw Jared Allen under the bus. And I just thought something is off here, and not all four of these dudes are going to come back. All four of these dudes are now going to come back. They have Donovan Mitchell, bought them basically an extra 2 years with his extension. And I think it was rickety last year, and maybe you get to a point mid-season where you have to look at breaking up one of the dynamics, but Kenny Atkinson's teams in Brooklyn always overachieved at one end of the floor. It was usually defense, but I think he will be creative with how he uses Mobley and Allen together in actions. And I keep coming back to the fact that like those four were really good together when they had less familiarity in year one and like an inferior roster around them too. And so I'm just like, it sort of feels like we're sleeping on the Cavs to the extent I'm not doing this yet, but I very easily could see them being like better than the Bucks, maybe even better than the Knicks, just because like there's not another team in the East aside from Boston that has in a vacuum the top end talent at their like top four spots when you just look at their four best players.
Yeah. And who knows? I mean, we saw Mobley when he came back from the injury wasn't shooting like a super high volume of threes, but was starting to take them at more than he was prior to the injury, and was at least like offering some semblance of floor spacing, which is basically what one of those two guys needs to do to make the Mobley Allen partnership work. It's also, just important to remember how young Evan Mobley is and how long it often takes NBA bigs in particular to really hit their stride. And he was already such an impactful defender. And frankly, we saw like the Cavs were almost better with some of those guys either injured or like off the floor. Like if Atkinson can figure out the right stagger patterns and right pairings of, do I play Garland with Allen or Garland with Mobley, and then Mitchell with Allen, Mitchell with Mobley. Like how many of these guys can I have on and off the floor at any one time? If he figures that out, they're in business. He has experience coaching Allen and Karis LeVert already.
Mm.
And, with all due respect to JB Bickerstaff, like I don't know that was. I think there's a real chance that was a coaching upgrade this offseason. So I think I think they were already a very good team that deserved to be in this conversation, and now, potentially, thanks to internal improvement, have a chance to get even better.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that needs to, I think it is a coaching upgrade. I thought JB Bickerstaff was too risk averse, and then like his hand was kind of forced with the injuries, and the Cavs played more creatively in the way that stylistically they should have. But I think he got, once everybody was healthy, a little bit better at taking some chances there. But I do agree that I think it's an upgrade overall, that I think there'll just be more creative stuff done with their top four guys. So I'm glad we both had them in this tier. I didn't know for another team. What did you do with the Grizzlies?
So again, my tiers were a little loose here, but the Grizzlies were in here for me. Because
I was thinking about it, so that's good enough for me. I'm going to put them in here.
I just think everyone's forgotten how good they were 2 years ago because they just got. I mean, every year this happens to one team where you just get absolutely annihilated by injuries, and it was like to a comical extent with the Grizzlies last year. But I actually think it might have benefited them because you got to see Jaren Jackson Jr. more in a featured role. We got to,
his ISO frequency like tripled his career average. It's crazy.
And they like probably don't find Vince Williams Jr. or GG Jackson if they're all healthy. And now you've like got these two legit rotation guys locked up on these super cheap deals who can now go back down to being your like seventh, eighth, ninth man. Because we still have, John Morant, hopefully he's healthy and stays out of any off court trouble. Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., Marcus Smart. We'll have to see like if Zaire Williams pops at any point. Who knows? Probably not.
As a Zaire Williams fanatic at one point, I don't think it's happening.
The ship might have sailed, and that's okay. But I think Memphis we'll see like what they do with Zach Edey, but he at least intrigues and could give them some different looks that they didn't have, especially with Steven Adams hurt last year. So like this team won 55 games and was the 2 seed in the West 2 years ago, and now all of a sudden we're just like completely ruling them out because they just had a bunch of injuries last year.
And so the thing for me, I do think part of it is just absence makes us forget when it comes to the NBA. It's not, It doesn't make our hearts grow fonder. We just forget.
Right.
And so I do think there's that element, but I do worry like Jaren Jackson Jr., even Marcus Smart, and of course John Morant, they're not pillars of durability. There's always been something that it seems like one of them is dealing with. And then Marcus Smart was so bad last year. And granted, he was overstretched and the spacing was weird at points. The spacing might be weird again, especially if you're going to play Jaren Jackson Jr. next to a traditional big most of the time. And so it gives me pause where I still feel like as much talent as there is, that they might be elite defensively and then really struggle offensively in set situations. But what you mentioned, and I think is the thing that swung it for me in the sense that I wasn't sure where I was going to put them, but you had them in A tier and I was thinking about, so let's throw them in the A tier. Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. getting those reps last season, their efficiency went down, although Bane's wasn't down by much. But like now they're just better, more well-rounded players on the offensive end. And so you have more counters. I still think this is a team that's, a lot of people expect them to bring Luke Kennard back. And you mentioned GG Jackson and Vince Williams Jr. Those guys are legit rotation players, but they might still need a higher end wing because Smart isn't a wing. GG Jackson is for sure like a combo forward type. And then Vince Williams, he's not particularly big, but he defends up. So you could throw him in there, but there still feels like there's a lot of question marks. And so it's like, well, what separates them? Full disclosure, this was my last team of the A tier. So I know you said you had a few more. And so it was like, why do you have them above Phoenix? Why do you have them above, Golden State or the Pelicans? And the Pelicans are my TBD team. Like, depending on what they do, there's a transaction for them to be done. Like, I reserve the right to shoot them up if they, but so I think what it comes back to me is that there's a familiarity with their top three already, and there's more balance than there is when you're looking at Phoenix specifically, which just has all sorts of holes, even if you like their roster, after what they've done on the minimum market. So, and re-signing Josh Okogie to that balloon deal, of course, can't forget about that. So they were my last team, but there's so many questions. But I think we're kind of at the point where which of the teams in the A tier do we not have serious questions about? Maybe like, what is the one you feel most confident about? And I mean, we have Dallas ranked in front of everybody, so it's probably them, but we could just be like, well, they lost the athleticism of Derrick Jones Jr. And what does their point of attack defense look like now? Because you can't throw Najee Marshall on. You could do, I think, some of the change of pace guys like Shea and, but like, can he do like the raw, like the guys that have more lateral, like they're going to be more laterally explosive? I don't know. So the Grizzlies here for me, I think makes a lot of sense. I think I could probably guess which other teams you have in this tier though. Oh, you told me two of them, so I guess I don't need to guess.
I think when I said Suns and Kings, and I'm willing to move both of them down, and we could talk about them in a minute. The one team that I would probably still put it in the A tier, the Indiana Pacers. I know the playoff run might have been a little fluky because they got to take advantage of some injuries, and realistically, if Giannis is not hurt, do they get knocked out in the first round, and do we just not think about them in this context? But Halliburton is a legit number one, I think. Siakam has proved himself again and again to be just as good in the playoffs as he is in the regular season. And really, like, the Nembhard breakout after Halliburton got hurt was a big eye-opener. And if he can build on that moving forward, they've also still just got a bunch of young wings, Nesmith, Benedict Mathurin. Like, there's, if we're baking in the potential of internal improvement for OKC, I think it is fair to do the same for Indy. And I think Indy, very well, like, they were just so goddamn good offensively last year. They might be even better this year.
So what I struggle with them, I'm fine with them being in the A tier because, like, I mean, you look at their top two and then you just have a lot of pieces that fit around them. I just don't know how to feel about them defensively because you mentioned they have a bunch of young wings. In my eyes, they have one wing and his name is Aaron Nesmith. Like, Benedict Mathurin's not a wing. I know Ben Shepherd can kind of guard up, but do you consider him a wing? And so, like, it feels like you have to stretch the bound. And Andrew Nembhard can guard up, but now we're stretching the boundaries of they still need a bigger wing or combo forward defender aside from Siakam, who again, not a wing. But I look at Siakam and Nesmith and Nembhard as like those main guys there, and I just find myself wondering. And it's more of a curiosity than I'm criticizing them for this. One, who is giving Obi Toppin 4 years and $60 million? And two, couldn't you make the case that, like, especially given how the market shook out, why is this team? They would have been better off because they still could use their mid-level. They're just not going to. They're not going to be a team that pays the tax. I don't think. I'd be shocked if they did. But, like, what if you just put Najee Marshall on this team, to a podcast favorite around these parts? So I would like to see them go. They could make trades. I mean, they have that TJ McConnell salary, and like the Andrew Nembhard breakout is like, it complicates things in a really good way because it's okay. You have Nembhard and McConnell and Mathurin and Shepard's out there, and you're very invested in Mathurin, of course. But if Nembhard is this good on the ball already and gives you more defense than Benedict Mathurin, what is the like? So how do the minutes shake out there? And then also though, well, now you have Toppin, you have Turner, you have Siakam, Jalen Smith is gone, but Isaiah Jackson's still floating around out in there. What does this mean for Jarris Walker? Are you deciding to develop him as just this wing defender, and then you're going to try and fit him in on offense? And how's that work? They did not make my A tier, but I respect them enough for what they've built. And just like you speak about forgetting, before Tyrese Halliburton suffers that hamstring injury, he was going to be first team All-NBA and probably finish top 3 or 5 on the MVP ballot.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, that Toppin contract, I'm with you. Like, that was an overpay, but it felt like it might have been deliberately slow. Like, it might have just been a souped up version of what Phoenix did with the Cody. And
My issue with that is why go out 4 years
Yeah,
then?
right.
It's
Because
just
you're gonna
it's the
have to.
Zeke.
Yeah,
This is not Obi Toppin's a much better player that we've seen than Zeke Naji. But I like when the Nuggets signed the deal, I was like, well, that makes sense. They're gonna need some trade fodder. But I went on to think about it. I was like, well, if they don't play him, no one wants 4 years guaranteed of a player they know nothing about. And like that's
right.
kind of the situation they're in right now. So, but Obi Toppin is more proven. So like you can probably be like Obi Toppin at an average of 15 million a year. That's a good point. That's movable.
Yeah. Like I haven't looked up the exact number, but I wonder if it's in Dorian Finney-Smith territory.
Well, they could take him back. I think he starts at, I'm assuming it's escalating, but he starts at 13.4. So that would get you
Okay.
Dorian Finney-Smith.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
like this would have been a perfect Caleb Martin team too.
Yeah.
Which, by the
But
way, he's got to get a new agent. I know that his contract with Philly could be worth more than 40, but you had a
yep.
chance to guarantee yourself like an extra $25 million with the Heat for an additional year, basically, with they want him to
Yeah.
opt in and extend him. So that this honestly, I don't think I've ever missed on a free agent market more than I did this year. I guess I didn't understand how much teams were really just caps lock going through it and trying to figure stuff out themselves.
Yeah, I will say that was my big blind spot as well, was just like what was going to happen to the middle class this offseason because they just kind of got wiped out. And I like, honestly, I have a list of like potential articles jotted down in a notepad. And in one of the articles, or in my July section that I just didn't have time to write to before free agency began, was how short term balloon deals could squeeze free agency with a bullet point. More guys might have to take smaller contracts if cap space dries up, which, lo and behold, Tobias Harris out here getting $26 million a year. Caleb Martin's now taking $8 million a year. Like, it's, yeah.
I don't get. I said, remember when we were doing our free agency over unders? I think I said
Yeah.
Simone Fontecchio's. That he was probably the mid level guy, and I smashed the over, and he got like the room exception type deal. Like I was just like,
yeah, it was a wipeout. So it's a fair point about Toppin and about the Pacers in general. But I would put them in my A tier, and then I can be talked into moving every other team that I had in the A tier.
So who would be to get to the what tier are we up to now? B tier. Yep. Who would be your first team there? Because there's a team that I have in here that I was prepared to put very high up in the A tier had they just made the move for an archetype of player that everyone's been begging them to make, and they just decided, nah, we good.
I assume that being the Orlando Magic.
I don't think I've ever turned, and I still don't think they had a bad offseason, but when they were doing the BR live stream when free agency like starts, and they signed Contavious Caldwell-Pope, I went off and was just like, they are going to have this is a great, like they're clearly setting themselves up for another move. I was just like, oh, you're not going to sign KCP without like, now you're going to go out and trade for Anthony Simons, or you're going to go out and get LaMelo Ball or somebody. And then it's like, now we're just going to like reinvest in all our own players and call it a day. And just, they're going to be really good defensively again. And I recognize that Franz Wagner should shoot better and that Paolo Banchero is still going to get better. And I'm very high on Jalen Suggs. The term I've used from now is I think he's going to end up being like a supercharged Derek White, but like you actually have, I would argue, even less options to run your offense because Markelle Fultz is now gone. And so it's Cole-Anthony and Suggs and Paolo and Franz. And like, that's what we're doing here. Off season's not over, but like even someone like Anthony Simons, who's very much a secondary, like if you put Anthony Simons on this team, if it's like Cole-Anthony, Jet Howard and picks, or Cole-Anthony, Anthony Black and a pick, whatever, I will shoot them right up past the Milwaukee Bucks right now. And it almost aggravates me. And I said it was going to aggravate me if they did nothing. They didn't do nothing. They did a bunch of stuff. But just like, why? I understand you're not trying to rush it, but like, it's only going to get harder for you as your team. And also, why are we maxing out Franz now? If he wanted to max, make him earn it and just sign him to it in restricted free agency. So there's something, I just wanted them to be in even better shape than they are. And I feel like there's still opportunities out there, I'm sure. But if this is the team, they're going to be a really solid playoff team. But I think the path to them winning a playoff, even a playoff series, is just like KCP is not the difference there.
Yeah. It sounds like, and I'm in the same boat. Like, opportunity cost is kind of the big critique here. They had the opportunity to create $50 million this summer in cap space and could have made multiple major splashes. And KCP, I think, counts as a big splash. I think the renegotiating and extending Jonathan Isaac was smart business for them, especially, they still gave themselves some protection on the back end.
Mhm.
Like, it's not fully guaranteed. That should be a great trade chip if he stays healthy. He's an incredible defender. So to your point, that is all good. It's like, why are we paying Goga Bitadze, what was it, 3 years, 25 million? Forget what Mo Wagner got, but it was also like in the 10
2 years,
million.
22 million.
There you go. Yeah. So like Orlando's just in this spot, and this is always the trickiest part of a rebuild of like your cap space is about to disappear because you just maxed Franz. Jalen Suggs is up for an extension this summer, or he'll be a restricted free agent next year. Paolo will be up for an extension next year. You have a basically 2 year window, not even 2 year, 1.5. You have to use your flexibility by the 2026 trade deadline because it is gone after that. And it just doesn't feel like they maximize this window. But maybe they just don't feel pressure to do it in this window. And maybe they said kind of the approach that OKC took at the trade deadline this past February, which drew some criticism at the time of like, we just want more data. Like we need to identify our biggest weaknesses and biggest needs. And then we have all of these big pieces and big chips that we like still have the potential to make this move. The right move just hasn't presented itself yet. Although to your point, it's hard to believe that like I would be fairly certain that Anthony Simons is at least gettable at the right price.
I guess what my issue with that is because I didn't applaud, but I understood what the Thunder were doing and I defended them by saying, tell me who they passed on that would have made the difference. Then people came at me with Daniel Gafford. And I was like, did you watch Daniel Gafford in that Thunder series? Was not even playable. I know he ended up helping that team, and they won that. Dallas wins that series. But the thing with the Magic is they have the data. We just watched the playoff series where everything that we thought was going to go wrong or would be their undoing is what unmade them. And so if you go the route they have so far, to me, it has to be because you believe that Paolo is just going to level up as an orchestrator and that even giving him infinitesimally better spacing is going to unlock a version of like, this guy is our LeBron. And so if you believe that, and that's what you want to say, okay, fine. But otherwise, it's all right. We really believe that Jalen Suggs is going to become a floor general type player. But I just think and those guys are going to get better. I just said, I love Jalen Suggs. I thought he made some strides as a passer this year, particularly in the open floor. That being said, we've seen these guys in the playoffs, and I know they're going to continue to get better, but like, they didn't even address their high volume knockdown shooting thing. Like, this isn't some guy that you're going to run off a ton of pin downs. And he struggled shooting at points last year and in the playoffs. And so like, you could argue that they didn't even address they did. KCP is going to be a great fit here, but it feels like it was too minor for me based on how good I think they could be. And maybe they just looked at it as like, well, Boston's not going anywhere. What's our rush? And now they've made the decision. Any splash we do make is going to be via trade. And it was going to be via trade anyway, because like they were mentioned in the Paul George sweepstakes, but that always felt like kind of stalking horse type stuff.
Yeah. And that was just him trying to leverage the Clippers into giving him the max. Like, and just in case the floor falls out in Philly and Daryl Morey is a liar and doesn't actually give you the contract that he's been telegraphing for months. So, yeah, I mean, I'm totally fine putting them in the B tier. I think it's fair to put them either at or toward the top of the B tier. I think Suns fans in particular would take umbrage with that, but I just trust the Magic's depth more. And, one other thing about the Magic is like, we didn't see a ton of Jet Howard last year. Like, maybe he's the answer to some of their shooting problems. And Anthony Black,
he did do some nasty stuff. I watched when I was writing something, I watched some Jet Howard G League stuff. And I was kind of like, wonderful, like, why aren't they just trying out this guy? Like, he's supposed to be like what they need. And he wouldn't, when you look at his size, he wouldn't steal playing time from someone that you need to play right now. Now he theoretically would after you add a KCP, but yeah, you might be right. Like, maybe he's the answer to like the higher volume motion shooting type guy.
Yeah, they just have enough young talent that I'm willing to continue betting on them again, similar to the Thunder and to the Pacers, like internal improvement, I think has to be factored in for teams like this a lot more than a team like the Suns, where Kevin Durant, with all due respect, is like probably not going to get substantially better at this point in his career. He's already just phenomenal, and he's going to remain phenomenal probably until he turns 50, because that shooting stroke is not going away. But I have a lot more questions about Phoenix's depth right now and just like the avenues that they have to improve their team throughout the season, whereas Orlando has a lot more flexibility to address any glaring needs that pop up. Like they can much more easily make midstream adjustments than Phoenix.
Who did you have? Well, I don't even know if you had the Magic yet. That we just decided to talk about them first. Who was another team you had in the B tier?
So, Magic, Suns.
Would you have them in front of or behind the Magic?
The Suns?
Yeah.
I think behind.
Again, I mean, it's easier to come out of the East, and I don't.
Right.
We should probably just talk about Phoenix. Like, KD is his age 36 season. He's already injured with Team USA. Like, is that something we need to? I know they're probably being overly cautious, but that's something that's a little bit alarming. And we've seen over the past few seasons, like, he doesn't have it in the sense of if he's going to have to face double teams or make decisions out of those, he's just not the same type of dominant in those situations that he was. And yeah, I like the Monte Morris signing. I think Royce O'Neal, he always just seems to get criticized because he's always asked to do more than he should on defense. He's in another situation, but I still think he's a useful player. I just don't know what this team's defense ends up looking like under what is it's not like Yusuf Nurkic does not work for what we've seen Mike Budenholzer teams do. He's not going to have a Brook Lopez type renaissance under Mike Budenholzer, or reinvention, right. I should say, not even renaissance.
right. All of a sudden, Yusuf Nurkic is bombing threes and playing elite drop coverage.
The best rim protector in basketball. I've almost wondered, and I know I'm not the first person to say this, but it's like, do they just want someone who's tall and long, and so Bol should play some time at center?
Oh,
so, because it's like, what are you gonna run small? Maybe try out some David Roddy, who I'm not even sure is worth a roster spot at this. And it's not we're an agreement that Mason Plumlee's not the answer, right?
Right. I mean, that's the problem with Phoenix is they're just so top heavy. And I Grayson Allen was great from them last year, shot 48-ish% from 3-point range.
He played. I also thought he was better defensively than he had any business being too.
Yeah, honestly, that's where they fell apart in the playoffs. He got hurt, and then their depth was just so crappy after that they just have to I guess maybe this is the best way to quantify these teams in the B tier. Where S tier, I think things can still go wrong and those teams can survive to some extent. Like Celtics, we saw it last year. KP got hurt throughout the playoffs. They're still fine. These teams in the B tier, it feels like every single thing has to break right for them to be a legitimate contender. And so Suns, not only do your top three have to stay healthy, but Royce O'Neal needs to stay healthy, Yusuf Nurkic needs to stay healthy, Grayson Allen needs to stay healthy, because if any of those guys get hurt, where do you turn?
And also, when you look at their stagger patterns, in theory, they're set up to do it well. And maybe this will just it'll correct itself this year. They lost the minutes that Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal played without Devin Booker. And so it's if you're losing any two-star minutes, that's a problem.
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, the Beal trade in general, I know their hands were tied. I know Phoenix fans, I know you're already bumping up against the second apron. What are you going to get with Chris Paul's contract? I get it. Don't trade for the guy with the no trade clause. That was just
unless they're going to negotiate it out,
right?
If the no trade clause would have went with the I don't know who would have wanted that contract necessarily, but your hands would not be nearly as tied.
They honestly might be. If Zach LaVine is radioactive right now, I don't think Bradley Beal is movable, even without a no trade clause. I think you would have to pay to get off of him at this point. Kudos to Washington, man.
Would they have been better just with Chris Paul instead of Bradley Beal?
I mean, they would have at least had more flexibility to make changes this offseason and not only sign minimum contracts for 2 years straight.
I do think it's weird how people still kind of why would they have ever done the Beal trade? Where I do think if you're mad about the Beal trade, you should really be mad about how much they gave up in the Kevin Durant trade, because I feel that's the move that kind of moved them toward this. Or maybe it's just you should just be mad that Matt Ishbia is impulsive as fuck.
And I will say this, I think Ishbia deserves credit for at least going all in on this strategy. Like he is not cheaping out. He is, he's spent a ton of money on Royce O'Neal, and that's going to send their tax bill even higher. And like, yeah, and Okoye as well. Like that was, they paid him $8 million basically to be a midseason human trade exception because they.
Who are they trading that 2031 pick for? Is it Fontecchio in 2031?
It might be, or maybe it's KJ Martin. Who knows? Well, we'll have to see the dollar for dollar amounts here. But like, I respect, if he was going to go this route, which I don't know is the right route to go. But if you were going to do it, like the only thing you could not afford to do is get cheap with the supporting cast and like, use your bird rights when you can. And like, I know John Hollinger calls it the bird rights trap, but like they intentionally bird rights trapped themselves with O'Neal in particular at the trade deadline.
I'm assuming you have the Kings in here, right?
I do. Yes.
Would you have them behind these two?
Honestly,
I would have them look, I'm like so low on the Suns. It's not even funny.
Like regular season, I think I would put originally I had them in my A tier, and then you talked me out of moving. Like I think it's fair, but that I had my original A tier was just like teams I feel are solidly playoff, could easily see them being top 6 seeds, and then my B tier was like more play-in teams I just have more questions about. So I'm good with like keeping Magic, Suns, Kings down here because things could easily break wrong for all of them. All three could very easily be in the B tier, but I think those 3 are probably above anyone else in B tier. So yeah, I think I would do Magic, Kings, Suns as the top.
What did you think of the DeMar DeRozan acquisition, both in terms of what it cost, that 2031 swap plus Harrison Barnes, some seconds and cash, obviously, and then just the overall fit?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the 2031 swap, I liked it a lot more before that detail came out because that.
And it was just like an add-in, like Woj included at the bottom in a separate tweet. I'm like, buried the lead a little bit there, buddy.
It's like, sir, that's what they gave up. That was the big piece they gave up. Like, I like it. I think he's going to raise their floor in the regular season. I don't know that it makes them a significantly better playoff team. It might not make them a better playoff team at all. We've seen the on-off splits with DeMar over the years, but, I think DeMar has been one of the most clutch players over the past couple seasons in Chicago. De'Aaron Fox has been one of the most clutch players for the last 1 or 2 years in the NBA. So now just having 2 guys that you can reliably go to in late close game situations, I think will help them steal games that they otherwise have no business winning. Mm-hmm. So it's really just, can that defense hold up once the playoffs roll around? Because they just have so many guys who can be targeted on that end of the floor. So I don't have much confidence in them winning a playoff series, but I'd be surprised if they don't win 45 games this year.
I think what helps my impressions of them is I'm a big believer in Keegan Murray's defense. I think Keon Ellis played well enough. And I think even De'Aaron Fox was less stiff on that end of the floor. That there's a pathway to where if you're playing Sabonis and DeRozan, you can still build lineups that might have 3 average or better defenders. Again, you're banking a lot on De'Aaron Fox in that scenario, who I also do think is like a dangerous enough shooter to where if you want to run stuff with Sabonis and DeRozan, that Fox has learned to move without the ball a little bit more since Sabonis came, and I think he has a good enough shooting stroke to make it work. They also still can make moves. Like they have and like the thing about DeRozan too is I'm sure they didn't sign Malik Monk with the intent to trade him, but that becomes like a salary if they want to flip offense for defense. They still have Kevin Huerter. I know he's coming off a down year and he had a really bad 2022 postseason. 2023 postseason as well. But like that's another contract that's if you want to go. I know a lot of people mentioned like, what about Kevin Huerter for Dorian Finney-Smith? I even suggested like, what about Kevin Huerter for Cody Martin if he's healthy and Grant Williams? It feels like they have ways to kind of futz and fiddle midstream that will make where it doesn't have to change the entire identity or core principles of your team and like can just make you better. And like if you're moving Malik Monk, it's probably a bigger swing for sure. So I think I might like their playoff stock. I think DeRozan is going to help them navigate the regular season and ensure they get to the playoffs. And then I'm wondering, like, does Mike Brown have the ability to make some tough calls with his lineups once you get to the postseason? Because I feel like it might be a different iteration of the Kings, makes more sense. And a lot of the matchups are in that like postseason, this team is game planning for you for 2 weeks straight and no other team type of environment.
Yeah. So how did you classify your B tier? Like which types of teams were in here for you?
That was my, like, these guys are in the playoffs, might have a higher ceiling than that, but I expect them to
Okay.
finish in the top 6 of their conference. And like, I think to some extent, like, the math just doesn't work out in that with the West, because we have the Thunder, the Nuggets, the Mavericks, the Wolves, the Grizzlies are there, and then it's the Kings and the Suns. But it's like, even if it's, one of these teams has to get through by way of the play-in time, like, I just considered them almost like they will be a top 8. They will be in the 8 playoff team bracket is kind of how I
Okay.
viewed it.
Okay. So that in theory leaves what, one East team and one West team? Or no, maybe 2 East team? No, one East team, one West team.
Yeah, so I'm curious who you had in the West here. I'm I like I went against my better judgment because I'm just a big believer in, like, so many pieces of their team, and I have New Orleans.
Yeah. I again,
It's between them, Houston, and Golden State, right? Is there? I mean, I guess the Lakers too, but
oh
I didn't.
yeah, I like originally my B tier was just teams that I thought like would be in the play-in mix, so like in the 7 through 10 range, and I had Lakers, Warriors, Pelicans, Heat, Rockets, Clippers.
So you basically need to identify. Well, you have. I guess, is the East team just easy to round out? Like,
It's
there's
just the
only
Heat.
the Heat.
Yeah, it's just it. I mean, you could maybe talk yourself into the Raptors, but it's just the Heat.
I am going to be higher on the Raptors than consensus. I can already see it, but I'm just, look, Eric Spoelstra will work his voodoo,
Yeah.
and they'll at least be in the mix of the top 8. And I think Toronto might steer itself out of the top 8 if it gets to that point. So that was I don't even, like, what else are we going to say? I mean, the Heat, or if you want them to get better, or is there, honestly though, is there a scenario where, like, the Hawks are just better balanced and they're, like, have a case to be put in over the Heat?
It's hard for me to see it.
Okay.
Because it feels like they're just kind of pivoting toward, like, I don't know if they're trying to move off to Trae Young right now. I think they would want more assurance that they could get at least one high caliber point guard in return. But like that, them landing the number 1 pick seemed like it gave them some license to at least heavily retool, if not fully rebuild. So I just don't know what their intentions are as a team right now. Whereas like
I honestly think that they're going to be
obviously
going for it just because San Antonio controls your next 3 picks. And so unless you're moving Trae Young to them and getting some of your picks back, I just don't see the incentive for them to go the rebuilding route.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't have it necessarily. It's just, where are you, like, how much can you spin your wheels with this iteration of the team, and like what is Clint Capella on this team past mid-February? Like the Heat, I'm confident will go for it this year, and frankly, Jimmy Butler in a contract year getting publicly rebuffed by the team president being like, "Hey, I'm not going to give you this money. Show up during the regular season next year." Probably going to light a fire under Jimmy Butler. Like, I think we might see a Jimmy Butler who actually cares about the regular season this year because he knows he has to get one more big payday.
That, or he's getting older, and he could be entering his Tour de Fart era.
Oh boy. Yeah. I'm not gonna put that out into the universe because Miami fans already hate me. So
I will say about the Hawks, though, is like, even if you're looking to move Trae Young, you took one potential Trae Young team off the board by trading DeJounte Murray there.
Right.
And right. And then San Antonio now has Chris Paul, Stephon Castle, and Trey Jones, and just doesn't. I actually liked Trae Young there, but it never felt like a Spurs move. Yeah, and it's like they're almost like, well, we'll dare you to trade him somewhere else so that your picks become even more valuable. Right. And so it's just like, who is the Trae Young team? Is it Miami? Is it, like, can Houston talk itself into that? And then it's like, I'm starting to wear, it's like, Orlando's not going to do it.
Yeah. It's the Lakers.
Oh, forgot about that.
That's right. Yeah.
Might be the only guest on your podcast that just forgets about the Lakers.
I mean, it's easy to do these days. With
your podcast, who is the final West team? in this tier.
I'm good with going with the Pelicans. I mean, I agree with you. It's like weird to do that when I don't know who their starting center is right now. But it
It's Daniel
does.
Tice. Thank you very much.
I repeat, I don't know who their starting center is. Right? If Daniel
In
Tice is
that
their
case, we will be moving them down to the D tier.
right, yeah, if Daniel Tice is the starting center in mid October, I would not have them as my final team. Uh, but I think that it just feels like another shoe has to drop at some point with Ingram, or maybe I mean we'll see. Like this Brunson thing, I think could have some interesting ripple effects across the league, and maybe it'll be a wake up call to Brandon Ingram of like, hey, this guy was going to get this max contract, and he still took way less. Like that what Mark Stein reported the other day. The Pelicans have like let Brandon Ingram try to find another team that is willing to give him a max contract, and he just can't do it. So maybe that's a sign that even if you become a free agent next summer, I know Keith Smith of Spot Tracks already put out some early cap space projections. There just aren't a ton of teams projected to have cap space in general, much less max cap space. So maybe
Right.
Brandon Ingram doesn't move, and maybe it is Daniel Tice at the starting lineup. Which
I hate it's the same thing with Julius Randle, where these players are, you can make fun of them all you want, they're flawed, but they're good.
yeah.
I just struggle to find like destinations where it's what team would trade for him, give up something, and then be prepared to pay him. I don't like with Brandon Ingram. I just don't have one. Some people like the Kings. I hate it. I thought about the Lakers. Might make some sense. They don't have any wings, like two-way wings on that roster, and he would come close to at least meeting that criteria. But I don't love the fit with him, AD and LeBron. Like none of them. Like AD doesn't space the floor, and then LeBron likes to work on the ball. Brandon Ingram likes to work on the ball, but that might be, if you don't want to give up what it costs to get Trae Young at this point, I'm assuming Brandon Ingram is going to cost less than that.
Yeah. It'd be very funny if the Pelicans just turned into a Lakers feeder system where they just keep trading stars to the Lakers and then just keep shorting the Lakers' future.
Right.
Which actually worked out pretty well for them. It helped them get DeJounte Murray.
Yeah. So but like, do you have any, like, what's like a realistic Brandon Ingram team to you? I thought about Memphis a little bit, but like that salary matching gets a little, it's like, okay, so you're trading Smart and Clark, I guess, is how you're going that route, or like Smart has to be in that deal because you're not trading Bane or Jaren Jackson Jr.
Right. And then are you paying, well, I guess Jaren Jackson's on way below max, but like, Ja's on a max, Bane's on very close to a max. Are you also going to give Brandon Ingram this massive contract when Jaren Jackson Jr. is due for one in the near future as well? So, yeah, it's tough to find a team that makes sense. Maybe the Hawks, if they're refusing to tank.
Well, they could have probably been the DeJounte Murray trade and didn't.
Yeah, that's true. That's a fair point. Yeah. The Jazz, if they're just desperately searching for this partner for Lauri Markkanen that may or may not materialize. I don't know. That's a good question. I know the Cavaliers have been mentioned. I just don't get how they do it.
That's the one that's a terrible fit. Yeah. That's like,
yeah.
Especially who do you want? Like, I guess, well, Jared Allen obviously does. But say, you don't want one of the guards because you have DeJounte Murray, but I forgot about Jared Allen for a second. So
yeah, I think it'd be like Allen and LeVert. So you're just hiring Kenny Atkinson and then getting rid of all the Kenny Atkinson players.
But I'm just oddly hot. Like, even if you have to run it back with Brandon Ingram, just the idea of like another year of Trey Murphy getting better, of Herb Jones maybe getting better. You've added DeJounte, who I've always been higher on than a lot of people. I thought CJ had mostly a really good year last year when you look at his 3-point volume specifically. And just Zion is just, if you get, again, it's the same thing with Joel Embiid. And I feel like Zion's injuries have just been, they feel kind of as random. Like, it's not the same thing that keeps hampering him, right? So, but he's been utterly dominant when he's at his peak. And so it's like, this is the team when you look at, like, as of right now, like in this tier, they could potentially have the single best player of, like, that's how good Zion Williamson is. And it's okay. Well, what about Jimmy Butler? What about Kevin Durant? It's yes, those guys, maybe you would pick them over him, but like, there's not a pathway next season to Orlando having the best player in this tier, I would say, as much as I love Paolo Banchero. And like, the Pelicans still have that element of, this might be a top 7 or 10 guy that's just on our roster.
Yeah, I mean, we saw him in the playing game against the Lakers. Like, that was his statement playoff game or play-in game or whatever you want to call it. But like, that was the oh, I'm ready for this stage too. I'm not just an 82 game player. And then unfortunately he gets hurt, which is going to raise, a whole nother round of questions of can this guy stay healthy? But you're absolutely right. If he does, and we'll see the fit in theory with him, DeJounte, CJ, Trey Murphy as the floor spacer, and Herb Jones. Like they have the potential to play some really creative lineups this year. They
Mhm.
could just really go heavy on small ball, but like versatility is a thing that we've seen throughout, especially like the last 5 to 10 years. Like you basically can't only play one style and expect to win 4 playoff series because you're being tested in different ways each series. And I think the Pelicans have more answers than some of the teams right below them.
Yeah. So I don't know that I think you could have put some other teams here, and I'm sure we're going to talk about them now. What does your C tier look like?
So I would have Lakers, Warriors,
And these are kind of
Rockets.
like the teams we're considering them play-in teams that might have potentially higher ceilings, but as of right now, it feels like their most likely path to postseason basketballs through the play-in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So Lakers, Warriors, Rockets, Clippers. Uh I guess Raptors and Hawks in there as well. Because just again, it's like a numbers game. Someone has to finish ninth and 10th in the East, and it's certainly not going to be the Wizards or the Nets. And we're,
Yeah,
maybe
it's
the
definitely the Hawks are definitely like they have every incentive to continue to try to win, and it's just yeah. So it's but I don't know. I like could the Bulls maybe consolidate picks and be the team that trades for Brandon Ingram for some reason? Like
oh my God, please no. The Bulls I had in my lowest. Like I think they have finally embraced we are just going to be bad, or we're going to lean on our young players.
it's
And
the Bulls though.
I
So
know, I
but
know.
yeah, I think these are the teams. Which team is more well okay, I'm around it. Which team is more likely if they're better than expected to trade out of this tier though? The Raptors or the Bulls, and it feels like it would be the Raptors. Like the Bulls might double down. Like, oh, we might get the 10 seed. Like we got to make a big move at the deadline.
That's right. Yeah, can't cost yourself that one game of play-in gate revenue. God forbid.
Hey, if they're eighth, somehow they might get two. So there
That's
you go.
right. That's a good point. That's a good point.
So of the teams that we've now settled on in this tier, I want to be higher on the Rockets, but they're just going to be so reliant on developmental pieces where Reed Shepard should play a bunch, Amen Thompson should play a bunch. Şengün is still young. I mean, he was great last year. Jalen Green is inconsistent. And they also, if they're healthy, I was talking about this with S. Barahini, they have like 12, 13 guys that should just get minutes. And so they seem ripe for a consolidation trade, but maybe not at the point where they're going to make it. And it's not to their detriment. It's a good problem to have, but it represses their ceiling, I think. And so I feel like the Lakers or the Warriors are the
Mhm.
team in this. I don't know which one. I mean, the Lakers haven't done anything really. They have Dalton Connect and Bronny James. Congratulations to the Lakers. And LeBron took a massive pay cut, of course. Uh, but like, and so they have that like chemistry built in. And now the Warriors, it's not just losing Klay Thompson. They're probably a better team in a
Mhm.
vacuum talent wise than they were last year. But they're still going to be reliant on like, oh, what is Jonathan Kuminga? What is Moses Moody? Can Pods take on more ball handling and playmaking? And then there's just how is this team going to score when you look at their offense and their potential spacing? It's yeah, okay, Buddy Hield, great. Like Steph Curry can dribble, and then who else? Pods and Draymond, like a little bit.
Mhm. We're running a
So
lot of 4-3 short rolls with Draymond.
right. And so, but you don't have the spacing to capitalize on those as of right now, I would say.
Right.
So,
Right.
I, just like who is the like who is your like number one team in this tier?
Yeah, I think it's probably the Lakers just because you don't want to bet against LeBron James until proven otherwise. And as we're seeing, even with Team USA, like the dude's almost 40 years old and he's still somehow a freaking top 10 player in the world.
Look, he said he's not coming back in 2028. I won't rule it out. I won't
Right.
rule anything out when it
I'll
comes to them,
believe it when
man.
I see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, it's easy to poke fun at the Lakers, especially what happened to them last year. But like, I think there is a fair argument that Darvin Ham was doing damage to them. Like even a league average coach, they might have been better last year, and Darvin Ham just so badly screwed with the rotations or screwed up the rotations that they looked worse than they actually were talent wise. And now, I mean, who knows? JJ Redick is a first time head coach. We have no idea what he's going to look like. But,
I hope he
having
has
seen,
LeBron setting like ghost screens or something. Like I need to see something off the walls happening with the Lakers.
I mean, what with like all 10 episodes of Mind the Game before he got hired, that wound up being his coaching interview. And, hearing him and LeBron just talk ball, like it's very clear that he has a sharp basketball mind and a creative basketball mind. And, I'm assuming the Lakers will put the coaching staff in place around him to give him some experience to lean on to handle all of the day-to-day minutia that he is assuredly not aware of. But, if his main focus is just designing the X's and O's, like that part of it, I am fairly confident he will be better than league average even. And so, LeBron and AD is a really solid foundation to build on. You're right. They haven't really done anything. Maybe they get a little bit more fortunate with health this year. I mean, Gabe Vincent barely played for them last year. But, like, really just going into the year, how long did it take them to settle on, like, they go on the conference finals with the, Reeves and Vando lineup. And it takes them a half a freaking season to get back to just starting that lineup. Like, what just happens if the Lakers from last season start that lineup from day one? And if they do it from day one this year, what happens?
I go back and forth because let's say they did make a coaching upgrade, or at least they're more creative on offense. And then what if Vando is healthier? What if Gabe Vincent is like that? Everyone was like, okay, the Gabe Vincent signing was super interesting, and then he just doesn't really play because he gets injured. Right. So there's that element to it, but also like LeBron and Anthony Davis were on the court for more than 2,000 possessions together last season. Yeah. And it's like the Lakers still just very clearly had this ceiling of you'll get into the playoffs maybe. And then what happens? They've done nothing to change that.
Right.
And so I do think though they're probably the most bankable it's just they have those top two guys. And like, even if you go to Golden State, you can't trust like Draymond the same way that you can trust AD. Right. I mean, you can't trust Draymond to not get suspended, quite frankly. And then right. The Clippers, it's okay. They're two top guys in Kawhi and Harden, but Kawhi is probably the least trustworthy of those two at this point. When you're looking at guys actually, like, yeah, we know what he is when he's on the court. How many games is he playing? So, and now you have to figure out, like, the Clippers have done the load management thing. It didn't work. This year they did the Kawhi's going to play thing. That didn't work. So is it Kawhi's on ice until April? Right. So what is the next move there? I think you're right that it's the Lakers. And honestly, the only other team, it's them or the Warriors. I just don't. Yeah. I guess if the Rockets really pop and they just like Reed Shepherd comes in and he's amazing out of the gate and increases their spacing, Tari Eason's healthy and they're just like fucking shit up on defense all the time. But they're just, it's not an insult. It's they're sitting pretty. And I don't think that they need to make a move to probably reach that point. And I don't know that they're going to be in a rush to make that move when it feels like they're very much structuring their books around having a bunch of cap space next summer.
Right, exactly. Like they have probably the highest upside of any team in this tier, like long term. Yeah. But I'm not sure that they reach it next year, whereas like Lakers and Warriors are clearly feeling a much more imminent win now pressure.
This is a fun question. Who is more likely to make a trade that requires them giving up a first round pick that is later than 2027? The Lakers, the Warriors, I'll throw the Rockets in there, or the Clippers.
Probably the Lakers, just because LeBron is 40 and he is clear. The 1+1 did not seem like a coincidence. He is going to continue to exert pressure on that organization, which is hilarious because they're probably going to be like, look, dude, we know you're not leaving LA. Like, you are clearly just, if you wanted to leave LA, you would have left.
We've literally holding your son hostage and paying him millions of dollars.
Right. So I'm sure he's going to try to pressure them into it. I don't know that it necessarily works, but they do at least have a bunch of those like mid-tier, D'Angelo Russell, Vando, Gabe Vincent, Austin Reeves, Rui. Like they have the contracts to make it work. And because of LeBron James' massive pay cut, they're slightly below the second apron, so they are allowed to aggregate contracts. So I think they're probably the most desperate to make a move since, as you said, I mean, like the Warriors, they made moves this offseason. I mean, losing Klay Thompson obviously sucks, but like Buddy Hield, DeAnthony Melton, Kyle Anderson, those are all like pretty big additions to that team. And I agree with you that I think there's a real chance they're better this year than they were last year as a result.
And there just seems, and even if you just framed it as who's most likely to make a trade that matters, it still feels like it's the Lakers, because the Clippers, there's no pathway to them being contenders again. They just don't, like, it's gone. And so why are you going to make any sort of move? Because you're going to have to give up a distant first round pick to do that. And then the Rockets, I just don't know if they're going to have the appetite for it. We already mentioned the cap space, and just they have so many, not projects, but prospects, I guess, and they're trying to figure stuff out. And then the Warriors would be the other candidate. So we just keep coming back to Lakers, the Warriors, but they don't seem to have an appetite to do that either. Like, I know they've been linked to Larry Markkinen, but they seem oddly obsessed with Jonathan Kuminga, who seems like he could be a really good player, but is not played like a really good. And part of that might be opportunity, but like Jonathan Kuminga is viewed as like, well, could they really like give him up in a trade for Larry Markkinen? Yeah, they absolutely could and should if they have the opportunity to do that. So but they just seem like that they're planning for the next era more so. And it's like, we're going to do a 1.5 timeline thing where we don't want to be irrelevant until Steph fades into the sunset, but we're not getting rid of our young guys to maximize what's left of Steph's prime.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And they already traded the 2030 pick. So I think they have 2028 is the only one they're legally allowed to trade past that range, whereas the Lakers have 29 and 31 that they can offer. And I think you're right. Like, the Warriors should not be interested when Stephen Curry is only under contract for a couple more seasons, giving away anything.
Why can't I didn't look at their pick commitments. Why can't they trade 2026? Who do they? Because their pick commitments are weird, and it's like a fake first rounder they sent to Washington in the Jordan Poole, very much a salary.
Right, yeah.
So,
I mean, for some reason I thought
they could trade 26 and 28.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's just 2030 they can't.
Yeah. Could they also do, if they wanted to, be like, okay, it's protected for selections 21 to 30, and then also trade their 2030 first round pick, right? Since Washington's top 20 protected.
Technically, yeah.
So, I mean, and then swaps, of course. And I guess what's tough with this team is, even if I think they're better and more balanced on paper, it seems harder for some reason for them to make a trade that would vault them into title contention or close to it than it is for the Lakers, who have two guys that can headline a title contender. The Warriors have one guy. And like, if you add Larry Markkinen into this team, if you add Brandon Ingram, if you add Zach LaVine, even if you added Trey, like something like wild, like LaMelo or Trey, they're not there. But if you add basically any of those names to the Lakers roster, I think you could make a case for the Lakers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that they're the only ones that could realistically vault into like the A tier this year. Whereas I have a hard time seeing any move that would put any of these other teams in there.
So I guess we should just, for posterity's sake, our D tier of teams that's no shot in. Although, should the Spurs have been in the C tier?
The Spurs,
like, are they better than the Clippers, maybe?
So I originally broke up the C and D tier. C tier for me was end stage rebuilding, is what I called it. And I had the Spurs in there, even though they're only, year 2 into the Wemby era, but like, he's so good that they are already in that. So I had Spurs, Jazz, Pistons, and Hornets in the we are not deliberately tanking this year tier. And then Wizards, Nets, Bulls, and Blazers in the we might win 10 games this year. We are trying to be pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, the Blazers, if they don't make some roster changes, might stumble into too many victories.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, the Spurs are the only team as of right now that I would say would be guaranteed to the Jazz still have Larry Markkinen right now, but even if they have him, they might still be trying to lose games. So this is like the Spurs are the only one in this tier. I'm like, should they have been up a little bit? Because the others are just like, okay, the Pistons and Hornets can try to win, but they're not gonna. And I honestly don't think the Hornets are gonna try. And then like the Bulls, maybe they'll try, but they're the Bulls. It won't matter. So
you could talk, especially now like with CP3 and with Harrison Barnes, you could talk me into the Spurs being in the C tier instead of D.
Well, this is, I'm sure you've probably read this ad nauseum and stuff that I or other people have written and you've edited, insofar as we get an editor anymore on things. like the Spurs with Wemby and Trey Jones on the court last year
Hmm.
were plus 5.2 points per 100 possessions. You had Devin Vassell in there plus 10 something points per 100 possessions. And now it's like we have two more competent NBA rotation players, and Trey Jones can get bumped down to the second unit without us having a starting unit that's basically a sacrificial lamb
Right.
statistically. So there's like, I mean, just because it feels like all the teams in the C tier, like from the Western Conference anyway, they have like this boomer bust potential. And so like the Spurs might belong in the C tier just by saying, hey, the math doesn't check out, but one of these teams is going to implode, but one of these teams is probably going to be a lot better than we expect.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's
They're getting
like
promoted. I'm calling it.
okay. I like it. I like it. I'm allowing it because yeah. I mean, I could easily see them. I mean, I could see them making the play in this year, which is crazy to say, but like adding CP3, Barnes, and the Castle as well. I mean,
What I'm
we don't.
curious if they
Yeah.
were the team that traded for Lowry Markkinen, where would
Mm.
you put them? Devin Vassell is still on the team after this. That's really the only thing. Devin Vassell and Stefan Castle are still on the team, in addition to CP3 and Wemby.
Damn. I mean, definitely at least B tier. Do I put them in A? I think I would put them in B until I saw it, but
Would
B
you
with
have
the
them like at the
caveat.
front of B, like ahead of the Kings and the Suns and the Pels at that
Probably,
point? Yeah.
probably, yeah. Maybe
Oh,
not ahead
Wemby's
of the
the
King. I think
trophy.
the Kings will still have a really high regular season floor, but I mean, this like there's just never been anything like Wemby before, so we have no idea. I mean, we'll see in the next couple weeks of the Olympics. Like, wouldn't shock me if he's significantly better than he was a few months ago. I mean, the rate at which he was able to absorb information and then get better throughout the season. Like we typically don't see these like massive in-season leaps. It's like
Mhm.
you are who you are and then you take the off season and you add something new to your bag and you come back and you show it off and you're a much better player. Wemby was like, "Oh my god, this guy's getting significantly better as the season's going on."
Like, oh, he has a pull-up three-pointer now. And
Right. Right, right. He just seemed to get more comfortable with the NBA game. And to your point, maybe it's like we don't have Jeremy Sohan as the point guard anymore. Well,
right.
now we're not gonna have to do the point Sohan experiment for 30 games next season. You have Chris Paul and Trey Jones, and like Chris Paul. If you're banking on him to stay healthy for all 82 games, good luck. But like pairing him with any big man is just a cheat code. I mean, he made
Yep.
DeAndre Jordan into a freaking all-star. Or like he was that like what are you gonna he's gonna just throw a ton of lobs at the 7'4" guy who could jump up and catch them. All you have to do is throw it at the damn basket. And Wemby can outreach anyone. Like they're gonna just generate so much easy offense from literally just playing catch.
Yeah, I mean, he might honestly be so good. I know people framed it as he's going to agitate and they're going to have to make a move. That's not going to happen. He just might be so fucking good that they have no choice other than he's going to win us X games. And like at that point,
Right.
like we're not going to have these great draft picks. Like we might as well go trade for player X star Y, whatever, because Wemby has us like in contention for the 6th seed already.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, I think I said that last year. Like they are not able to tank anymore because he's just too good. And like good, especially now that teams like the Nets and the Wizards have just thrown in the towel on trying to compete. Like you are not going to catch those teams, so you might as well just let Wemby grow at his own pace. And I think they're being smart and strategic about how they are rebuilding around him. Like I respect them for not making an all-in move and for like going after these distant pick swaps and picks because they know like we need to be loading up for Wemby's prime at the turn of the decade, assuming that we were all still here on this planet at that point.
Well,
uh,
and assuming the mothership doesn't call him home before
right,
then.
that's right, right. That is, they're really gambling on a lot of future-based things that might not happen. But I think they're being smart about like I know they got killed for trading the number 8 pick to Minnesota, but it's like I get why they are making these moves. Like they are being very deliberate about this, and I think it's going to pay off in the long run, but also in the short run it might not matter because Wemby might be good enough that they're still winning at a much faster pace than you typically see for a team, this early into its rebuild.
Yeah, they're just. I want them to be aggressive, but I know
Yeah.
they just don't have to because he's just so good. Honestly, he's going to be one of the greatest players of all time if he stays healthy.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely wild.
I
Should
mean,
we
like,
do you want to recap what our tiers were unless you have anything else to add about any of these teams?
no, yeah. So S tier, we had Celtics, Thunder, Nuggets, Sixers, and Knicks, and this was our top tier title contenders. A tier were teams we feel reasonably confident about and could very easily see them making it at least around, if not two, or advancing, second round, maybe even conference finals. That being Mavericks, Timberwolves, Bucks, Cavaliers, Grizzlies, and Pacers. The B tier were, also teams that we think probably finish somewhere in the top 8 of their conference, that being the Magic, Kings, Suns, Heat, and Pelicans. C tier, we had Lakers, Warriors, Rockets, Clippers, Suns, Hawks, and Raptors. These are teams potentially probably in the play-in mix. And then the D tier, what in the pooper for Cooper, I believe.
Yeah, in the pooper for Cooper is the D tier.
There we go. So Jazz, Pistons, Hornets, Bulls, Blazers, Wizards, and Nets.
Could you imagine if the Spurs just decide to like Wemby might riot, but if they shut him down and they're in the pooper for Cooper and they get Cooper,
what if they just win what if they just get really lucky like Atlanta?
Or yeah, that's true too.
Just like get a 1% chance, and now you've got Cooper Flag as well. At that point, like it's already the Spurs and the Thunder's league by the late 2020s. But if Cooper Flag goes to San Antonio, like every other team should just push all of its chips in right now because there is no point. Like, dude,
That's over.
It's
over.
What are you waiting for? Like you're not winning in 2028. Just burn it all down. 28 teams will be rebuilding at the same time.
I'm looking at our list now, and like once we get through, because we kind of ranked them within the tiers, but so the S tier, even if you don't think they belong in the S tier, I feel confident about those 5 teams: the Celtics, the Thunder, the Nuggets, the Sixers, the Knicks. Then I feel confident in the Mavs, the Timberwolves, the Bucks, and the Cavs. So like after those 9 teams, though, I'm just looking at all these, and you could talk me into every single one of the like every single one of them. And if forget about in the pooper for Cooper, but
Right.
all these other, you could talk me into them being demonstratively better than we have them categorized, or just like way, way, way worse.
Yeah. You have to talk to me for a while to talk me into the Raptors, but other than that, yeah, like I could definitely see the Rockets winning 45 plus games and quit like being the 6th seed in the West. It's just for me the West is so tough. It's like I'm baking in, like if the Rockets were in the East, I think I would feel more confident in their chances of actually locking up a top 6 seed. It's just they're in the West and there's like if you think the Houston Rockets are going to be a top 6 seed, we do this with, the draft and with trades and with roster spots all the time. It's like which of Thunder, Nuggets, Mavericks, Wolves, Suns, Pelicans,
Grizzlies.
Kings, Grizzlies. Yeah, that's 8 teams that we just mentioned. Wait, like you have to remove 3 of them or put the Rockets over 3 of them. I can't make a case like that.
No, I can't get there with you. Just fascinating exercise to do. I'm curious if we'll have any transactions that kind of blow this up, though, the rest of the offseason.
We need to put this out tomorrow morning, and I swear to God, if Brandon Ingram gets traded tonight, I'm going to scream.
Well, that's fine because Brandon Ingram's not someone who impacts the title race.
But it depends on what the framework is. If Brook Lopez is going to New Orleans, we're just swapping the Bucks and the Pelicans in our tiers. Then.
Well, so we'll have to agree, even while you're about to have a baby. So maybe, but like if there's a move that it can't happen this week, that'd just be worth it. But if there's a move that happens within the next couple of months that shifts this, we'll have to redo it and maybe see how much it changed.
Yes, this feels like a fun mid-season after the trade deadline to revisit and see just how wrong.
Wait, will it? No one's going to trade. They have no idea what's going on. With
That's right. Well, no, Dan, all these teams are saving their mid-level exceptions for trade exceptions. Clearly, that's the only reason they're not spending them right now.
Yeah, that's the only reason.
we'll have to do a how teams got too scared of the second apron podcast at some point. A follow up to teams should be afraid of the second apron podcast.
And should we get like CJ McCollum and Grant Williams on the podcast too?
Grant, how do you feel about getting the last big mid-tier contract in NBA history? Congratulations. What?
And I know people. No, let's not. We need to save it. It's just wow. That's all.
Well, there we go. We've got another podcast in the hopper.
This happened last time we recorded, where it was. It was like, well, we're gonna record another one.
Well, Dan, thank you as always for coming on. It's always a blast to have you and to walk you through goofy exercises like this. So can you let our listeners know one more time where they can find you on Twitter and where they can find your work?
Yes, follow me on Twitter at Dan Favale, Favale. All my stuff is at Bleacher Report. And then also check out the HardwoodKnocks podcast. Just like the NBA podcast, we cover the NBA at large because there's not enough NBA podcasts out there, quite frankly. You have no options aside from the NBA podcast and HardwoodKnocks. So you might as well subscribe, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the whole nine, but spelled exactly as it sounds. Come check Grant and I out. And then more than occasionally, I would say, Brian is on the podcast as well. So that's another reason to come tune in. And I love doing these things with you. I'm always happy to talk hoops with you. I'm excited that we get to tease. We're doing the Brian Windhorst thing where I know things, but I can't say it. And we're doing this. We've got content coming. We're not going to tell you what it is, but there's more content. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun exercise. So please go subscribe to HardwoodKnocks. I will be on there sometime within the next week, presumably. We'll see when this thing gets published at BR, but we do have a fun project coming up, and hope you all enjoy that because we had a ton of fun doing it. But Dan, thank you again. We always love having you. And please, everyone, thank you for listening in. As always, please follow us on Twitter at the NBA Pod. You can find our Twitter handles in our bios to give us a follow as well. You can also find us on iTunes and wherever podcasts are found on iTunes. Please subscribe, download, leave some 5-star reviews. Until next time, I'm Brian Toporek, and I was joined by our very special guest, Dan Favale of the HardwoodKnocks podcast. Dan, thank you again, my friend. We will talk soon.
Yes, talk to you very soon.